sorry for the delay. I'm a terrible designer because I'm always iterating on everything I do, including this talk, up until they told me, hey, you're supposed to be in this room. I actually wanted to start with a little teaser. And is that going to play?
When we left Earth, we entered a cold, vast territory. Beautiful and dangerous. But we didn't come for the view. We came for what we could take. And we made it even more deadly. Space is unforgiving, but so are your enemies.
Okay, so that's what I've been working on for the last 4 years. Thank you. And give me this. Why are you being difficult? Oh, stop that. Oh, come on. Okay. Breathe. So real quick, this is what I hope to talk to you today about. Getting this game together has been a real challenge, mostly because we have no money. Really quickly, who I am, what have I done, what's Impeller Studios all about, what's Starfighter Inc. all about, and I'll go into some more detail about our process of getting this game made with no money, and what it's like working with a distributed team across multiple time zones, and finally finish up with some more details about the game itself. So who am I? I'm a space nerd. I grew up watching the Apollo program live and dreamed of being an astronaut, and then had a crisis of consciousness during high school and thought that the military maybe wasn't the way to go, and decided to become a metal guitar god instead. And I had hair then for that role. I actually did tour all over North America and Europe as a sound man for various bands. My first tour was a band called Violence. So I can say with a straight face that I have participated in acts of violence all across North America. And it was that job that brought me to Europe for the first time in my life, and to Holland, where I now live for the last 2 years. I love it here. So I got into the game industry in 1991 as a tester, working on graphic adventure games initially, which was not really my thing. But I did move on to what I really liked, which was flight sim, and as you can see, several other games. And I put a bunch of logos for the schools that I've taught at or developed curriculum for. And that's my ludography. The top row is all when I was a tester. And then everything after that is design, audio, writing, and also includes a couple board games. Hey. I credit board games with turning me into a game designer. So what's Impeller Studios? Says on our website that we create hardcore online multiplayer experiences for next generation gaming and VR platforms, and that is true. We haven't demonstrated the VR today at the conference, because it's just a little jittery and we didn't want to give a bad impression. But I think the next build's going to be good. We're a virtual studio, distributed development, no physical offices. Team members are literally all across the world. Most are in Europe in this time zone and on the East Coast of the United States. It's a volunteer, part-time workforce, mostly. There's a handful of people that work full-time. And most people have accepted deferred payment. Hope I get paid someday. And it's a nice mix of senior, experienced developers and fresh new talent. And I thought this was a kind of cool way to visualize the spread of our team. Currently active on the team, there's actually 34 people, but the majority of those people are putting in maybe 5 or 10 hours a week. Inactive, there's another 21 people that might come back or might contribute at some future point, and then there's about 50 people who've moved on, mostly to get paying jobs. So no hard feelings. What is Starfighter Inc? In the Kickstarter, we described it as Counter-Strike meets World of Tanks. And then people complained about that. You can't please everybody. It seemed to us to be a good way to do the elevator pitch. Counter-Strike's kind of a hardcore game. You know, one shot can kill you, and then you have to sit out the round and wait. And World of Warships is a fantastically successful vehicular combat game. And we're very intrigued by free-to-play and how you monetize that in a fair way without turning it into pay-to-win. We ended up going with sort of a freemium model. The demo is free, but the full game actually costs money. And kind of in a nutshell, Starfighter Inc. is science-fueled multiplayer space combat. The science part's important to us. Getting the atomic rocket seal of approval was a huge win for us. It was something that I really wanted. If you're not familiar with atomic rockets, if you have any interest in hard science fiction, I highly recommend it. It's basically our Bible. That's where we go to understand what things ought to be like and not fall into any of the traditional sci-fi tropes of nonsense. And so the shoestring budget part, if it wasn't for our industry partners, we would not have gotten nearly as far. So big thanks to our various partners. Last year, Alienware invited us to PAX and let us demo the game there. This year, Kickstarter invited us to be in their booth and launch our campaign from their booth. And that was a fantastic, wonderful opportunity that we could not pass up. So, without a budget, how do you recruit people? Turns out that 3 of the principals on the team, our day jobs are teaching jobs. So we can spot upcoming talent, we can mentor them, we can guide them and recruit them, see if they're interested, offer them internships, and they often remain on the project after graduating. Our current lead technical artist started out as an intern. At the conference demoing the game is our sound guy. He's just graduated. And one of our 3D artists who is starting school. He's already doing professional level art, but he's starting school. Using social media, I do a lot of research, I call it. And for visual references, I'm looking for realistic spacecraft. And that's how I found our chief spacecraft designer. He's turned out to be an engineering student at the American University in Beirut. The guy I just mentioned, Marnix, I saw some really cool art that he did on Facebook, contacted him and offered him the opportunity, and he jumped at it. It's kind of a cool added benefit of teaching. I love teaching. And then the first Kickstarter that we did back in June of 2015, there were among our backers, as you might imagine, people who are professionals in aerospace and NASA, JPL, that sort of thing. They asked really interesting questions, like, you know, I'm going to call you out on that science claim. And when we responded nicely, they said, hey, well, I'd be willing to help you guys out in the future if you need any consulting. Why, thank you. Yes, we do. I like to throw in a little slide of art now and then. Wall of text gets boring. Retention. How do we keep people? Well, the concept's inherently cool, so that helps. There's at least 24 space games out there right now in various stages of development, and Starfighter Inc. stands out, I think, primarily because of the science, but also the other pillar is a relentless laser-like focus on combat. Most of the other games are trying to be everything to everybody. There's trade, there's exploration. That's all cool. I like that, but that's not what I want to play. It's not what I want to make. Principals with a proven track record, that gives confidence for people joining the team that, oh, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. And it is truly a passion project. Everybody involved is super excited about it, and we're making the game that we want to play. I am talking too much and not breathing, so give me a moment. We also try to give people creative freedom, which is, for me, difficult sometimes. Not that I'm a complete control freak, but because the pillar of our vision is hard science, it's important to respect the science. And artists have a problem with that. Artists like to be really creative, and that's a problem when, well, this is an engineering drawing. These are spacecraft components. You can't just change the shape and size and placement. So we've had a few arguments about that. But ultimately, giving everybody on the team a sense of ownership and the ability to create and contribute in the way that they feel best and they feel most rewarding helps retain them. And obviously, it's an opportunity for growth for those members of the team who are new to the industry. This is maybe their first major project. And so what does it look like inside the sausage factory? Crowdfunding. I think everybody recognizes that it's an incredible opportunity to connect directly with the people that are most interested in your product. But it is a reality that most people have no idea of the realities of game development and ask for unreasonable things, make completely unfounded criticisms. And what we learned in our first Kickstarter is if you don't respond immediately and in a nice, informative way, that can turn toxic really quickly. And it's really just about being heard. If you let people know that you care about them sincerely, they can turn into your best evangelists, really. The other great thing about crowdfunding is it has forced publishers to change their attitude towards developers. It used to be pretty ruthless exploitation. You want funding? Well, surrender all your rights. You're now doing work for hire. And a couple of years ago, we were at GDC talking to a number of possible business partners, and it was a nice conversation for a change. It was, everybody was interested, nobody was trying to take over, and we may end up partnering with some of these companies in the future. And then just the general environment of doing a video game Kickstarter now is incredibly much more difficult than it used to be. When Star Citizen succeeded, it enticed a lot of people. It kind of proved that, hey, you can bring in a lot of funding this way. But they haven't really delivered yet, and there's been some other major disappointments, and you can't sell a concept, and you can't rely just on brand name or name recognition. So going into our second Kickstarter, we definitely had some lessons to work on. We came close the first time. We got 90% of the way there. 5,000 backers. And our mistakes in hindsight were kind of obvious. The postmortem We didn't show gameplay from the beginning. It was very late in the campaign when we finally had some gameplay to show. Our vision, we ended up expressing it kind of in a confused way, because we're selling a multiplayer game, but we made a direct comparison to X-Wing. And I regret allowing myself to be quoted as saying, this is the next X-Wing, because then fans of the X-Wing TIE Fighter games, well, but that's not true. This isn't single-player story-driven with cinematics. And I don't care about multiplayer. I don't like multiplayer. And so oh, well, yeah, we love that too. And the reason we're doing multiplayer is because that's what we can afford to do on our shoestring budget. And if you want story-driven single-player, we'd love to give that to you. We revealed all of our stretch goals up to the point where it would include that style of game. And it was $17 million. Predictably, people were upset and thought that we must be incompetent or worse. And it's like, well, actually, that would be cheap. If you went to Electronic Arts and asked for that kind of game, I'm sure they would quote you over 30 million. So anyway, lesson learned. Also, the other big lesson is it's an incredible amount of work. We thought we had done our homework and talked to people, and yeah, we're prepared. No, it's more than a full-time job. You should have more than one person available 24/7 to respond to backers, and you really should have the majority of your content ready to go before you even start. So the second one succeeded, yay. It was a nail-biter, though. The 5,000 backers, we thought, surely they'll all come back and we'll exceed our original target. We lowered our goal to make it easier. And now it started, and then it kind of flatlined for a while. We did a bunch of press and AMAs, and that helped. But then it was that final push the last week, the last 2 days, when it really took off, and big sigh of relief and celebration. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to play it now, but I urge you to go to the Kickstarter campaign page and click on the link to the high-res version of our cool video that's like 4 minutes long. So, working with strangers. This has been a kind of a bizarre experience for me. I've always worked in a studio. I could walk, into the office next door, just turn around and talk to people about problems. And when I started at Totally Games, I had my own office. And I came attached to that office, had a deck. It was really nice. And then I went to Stormfront, and it's open seating, and it's like a thoroughfare behind my desk, and it's noisy and distracting. I didn't like it until those serendipitous moments started to occur where I'm talking to a level designer about a problem we're having with the editor, and one of the programmers overhears, and, oh, what's that? Oh, you want it to do that? Okay, I can fix that. And, I'm sold. Open seating is good. But now we don't have that. The only time we interact is online, and it's voice and text chat. And it's really hard to read people. Been lots of misunderstandings. If you know me in person, you know that I have a somewhat dark sense of humor, and I'll say things in text that you don't read all those subtle cues that I'm being a little bit funny there, not attacking you, but I'm getting feedback. Why are you being so mean to the artist? They don't like you anymore. I'm like, what? PAX, actually, well, I'm going to back up. MENA Games in Lebanon, Beirut last year was the first time I met Zach, our chief spacecraft designer. This year at PAX was the first time I met about a dozen other members of the team. And it was an incredible bonding experience. It's like, we should do this every year. Maybe we'll get lots of money and we'll have a physical studio and we'll all move in together. But yeah, it raises the challenge. It requires a lot more discipline in your own work habits, but in your communication, and being responsive in a timely way, and just staying on top of things, being very clear about what you're doing, when you need help, asking for it. And we've tried a variety of tools. none of which have proven to be completely reliable. Sometimes that's the internet, not the tool, but and unless you pay for the pro version, you're often missing features that would be really, really helpful. But again, shoestring budget, so work with what you can. Currently, we're using Slack for text, Discord for team meetings. We've selected 6 p.m. Amsterdam time as the every day at 6 p.m. we have a short sprint meeting. And have one-on-ones through Slack or Skype or Google Hangouts when we want to share screens. The time difference thing is, yeah, this is a huge struggle, especially if we need to have a longer, more in-depth meeting. And the coordinating efforts, making sure that everybody's on the same page. Part of that problem is it arises out of all the leads have full-time day jobs. So we're not necessarily on top of everything, and things can easily go astray, especially if we have a period where our day job becomes critical. It's like, oh, well, it's the end of the term and you have to do a lot of grading, so you're not doing any work on Starfighter this week. And then the rest of the team is, well, I haven't gotten any feedback. I don't know if I'm doing this right. But it's workable. There's a huge body of knowledge out there now about Agile best practices, and everybody knows something about Scrum. Hardly anybody does it right. But as they say, you adapt to your needs and your situation. One of the things working with volunteers that makes it difficult is you can't force them to do anything. You must do daily stand-ups. I'm not gonna. You're not paying me. I don't have to. So you have to, make a more reasoned appeal. Well, this is why it's important, and we really need you to do that, which usually works. But like using Assembler and Trello, which are pretty simple programs, a lot of people just didn't want to do it. So, all right, well, we'll create a spreadsheet in Google Docs, and that'll be our sprint backlog. More art. That was a cell sheet we put together very, very early in the project. Funny story. It looks like a modern fighter plane, not a spacecraft. That looks like sort of an aircraft carrier submarine, and I'm sure the decks are all laid out just like that. And our first art director quit when I told him that was wrong, and he wasn't going to change it. Wrong answer. So, design and development of Starfighter Inc. Started out with Unreal 3, early days. We knew that wasn't going to be our final engine, but it was something that we could work rapidly in and get a prototype. And when I joined the team, it was a chance encounter at GDC, epic party. There's a video of a space combat game, and the guy standing next to me starts telling me about this project that he's working on. And yeah, we're really excited. It's like all those classic space combat games of the 90s, like X-Wing and TIE Fighter. We want to bring that back. It's like, oh, really? I worked on those. Get the hell out of here. You want to work on our game? Yes, I do. And so that was really, really happy moment for me, because the whole time I was working on Star Wars, in the back of my mind is like, oh, this doesn't make sense. This is World War II in space. And being that Apollo generation space nerd, what would it look like if it was real? And so for 20 years I've been thinking about this, and now I'm finally building it. That prototype, it was playable, but it was ugly. But I really needed to convince the team to go towards hard science, because in recreating that classic 90s cockpit shooter, well, that's what everybody else is doing. There's 24 of them. Let's zig when they're zagging. Let's do something that everybody thinks is impossible. Because you say to anybody, yeah, we're going to do realistic space combat. And they're like, that would be boring. Or, nah, you can't do that. I think we can. And so with that prototype, with terrible controls and placeholder assets, it only took about 15 or 20 minutes for people to start, then that, yeah. And then we start grinning and having fun, and like, there, there's our kernel of proof that what we have works, and we can build on that. There were skeptics. There were people that really didn't want to go this direction. Yeah, I just said all that. The other part of it, though, being a science nerd, is I like science. I like knowledge. I like knowing things about the world. And I believe science is better. And recently, in popular culture, we've seen a little bit of a trend. With movies like The Martian, kind of, sort of, Interstellar, and Gravity. But more and more people are saying, yeah, that's cool. And currently, The Expanse. Anybody watching The Expanse? If you're not watching it, you really need to. It's awesome. It's mandatory on this team. Yeah, and I covered all that. So, it's a funny story, another one. Our original lead programmer was very conservative politically, and we've set the time period of the game 200 years in the future, and yet the technology is really like 50 or 60 years in the future. So what accounts for that delay? Some global catastrophe. Trump. Something slowed us down. And I reached for climate change. That's a good one. And he's just like, no, that's a bunch of leftist propaganda bullshit. If you put that in, I'm quitting. Really? Yeah. Nonsense. Nonsense, I tell you. Space is not an ocean. Space is 3D, and it's effing huge. There is no FTL. There is no FTL, sorry. There's no artificial gravity, and there's no stealth in space. That's a big one. But wait, what if you did it this way? No exploding decompression. We've all seen that in Hollywood. I blame Hollywood. I blame George Lucas in particular for ruining science fiction. Insofar as I respect science. If you just want to be entertained with a space fantasy, fantastic. I love George. But yeah, there's a very long list. Go to Atomic Rockets. It'll give you the whole list. Thanks to our numerous industry connections of a long career, we have had a lot of very good peer review process in making sure that we have something that's going to work, that people are going to be willing to pay for and enjoy. So more art, cockpit, some examples of good and bad science. 2001 does stand out as one of the most scientifically accurate sci-fi films ever made, except for one thing. They took the radiators off because the artists, the filmmakers, didn't think they looked cool. But that's it does have FTL, so that's kind of crap, but from Avatar, Interstellar, Babylon 5, with that central component, the whole thing rotates to give the semblance of gravity in the only way that works. And Space 1999, which was really goofy, but their spacecraft designs were cool. And as I mentioned, The Expanse. What happens when a railgun goes through your ship? There's the hole where the head used to be, and nobody's being sucked out of that hole, and they proceed to patch it. So here's what the kind of design work that was happening at the start of the project before I joined. Very traditional fighter designs, and as you can see, I've annotated everything that's wrong with that. Improvements somewhat, but it's lacking in radial or bilateral symmetry. And we actually have a ship like this, very close to this, called the Hyperion in the game, which is currently being remodeled to put the engines in a logical location. When Zach, who's otherwise known as Zeraspace, I found him on Atomic Rockets. He'd been awarded the seal of approval for this design, which Atomic Rockets will make the case that space fighters don't really make a whole lot of sense. You know, drones and missiles why would you put a person in a small ship? But he came up with something that actually made sense and passed review. So I reached out to him and was very happy that he accepted the invite. And so he's been our chief spacecraft designer. But his first task was retrofitting the science back into those old designs, because so much time and effort had been put into them, we really didn't want to just toss the assets out. And to quote the character in The Martian, so he took the Hyperion and drilled down into it, and from an engineer's perspective, what would you need to make this design work? And it's been one of the really fun parts about having Zach on the team, because we won't understand something that he's telling us. So we have a divergence into science lessons with Zach. And I love the science. I don't follow all of the math. I just nod. And then I'm waiting for the numbers that actually matter for gameplay variables. And then I turn to the programmers. Okay, Zach said this. And so we were doing we had put flares in as a countermeasure for missiles. And I didn't mean it to be taken literally like flares for modern jet fighters, but a countermeasure that would act like that. And what I had in mind was some sort of EMP device. And I had no idea how small they could be made. And so, well, Zach, what would be logical, what would be reasonable? And he's doing a bunch of math, and I'm just nodding. It's like, it turns out, yeah, you could get something powerful enough, and then something about the size of a coffee can. Fantastic, then we can have lots of them. And then the programmers are happy, and they're implementing it. Like, oh, but wait a minute, is it like a spherical effect? Is it a cone? Oh, Zach, what? It's a cone. And how big of a cone? It's just fun doing that kind of stuff. One of the things I love about game design is it's an ongoing opportunity to learn new things, hopefully about stuff that I'm interested in. So this is what the Hyperion, this is almost what it looks like now in the game. So you can see a lot of changes have been made. There's the point defense laser turrets, missile tubes, artist scribble with something that doesn't belong there. Take it off, take it off. Yeah, so Wessman feedback. And then a more recent version of what it looks like in-game in the hangar and with corporate livery. I don't think I mentioned the somewhat tropish dystopian future with mega corporations running everything. And so the narrative backstory is that you're a mercenary. And what intrigued me about that was, in comparison with all the other games where it's always blow everything up, that's your goal, kill everybody and blow them up. Well, they're corporations. They're really, their focus is bottom line. And, going back to the Age of Sail, the naval battles were not about sinking everything. It was more often than not, capture them. If you can capture that very expensive warship, well, now it's one of yours, and that crew and the officers make money when you ransom them back. So in our game, that's going to be one of the features, that you can disable a ship, capture it, get a bonus for the ransom money that the hiring company got from the opposing company. That will also figure into your reputation. This is North Star. They're like the Boeing of the 200 years from now. And if you work for them, maybe you get discounts on parts or on ships. But their rivals are going to not want to do business with you at all. But maybe they have a really cool sensor suite that you want. So, well, you can capture it, maybe, get your hands on it that way. All of our ships are powered by closed-cycle gas core nuclear reactors. Did I just kill that? Sounds like I just killed that. No? Okay. So, should I diverge into science? No, I should move on. Sorry about that. This is a concept for our capital ship in the game that we've shown multiple times. It's called the Atlas. It used to be a mining ship, monstrous ship. It's 4 kilometers long, and most of the forward space was for collecting whatever's being mined. And now it's a military ship, and all that space has been converted into hangars and launch bays, and not in the most intelligent way. So there's going to be an Atlas 3, because that's the Atlas 2, that will have electromagnetic launch system. So was it Battlestar Galactica? The re-envisioned version of that, very gritty, and how the fighters launched. I love that, so we're going to put that in. And this is development on making the Atlas look real. Massive radiator panels in the back. More ZAC drawings for an asteroid mining facility. And then this is what it looks like in the game. I love that, you know, from a pencil sketch to in-game assets. This part of the demo that we haven't been able to do, talking about VR in this. So I've had a morbid fascination with all things military my entire life, even though I'm pretty pacifistic in attitude. And so, you know, the state-of-the-art fighters have always been a particularly interesting topic for me. So Eurofighter, Typhoon, F-35, and particularly with the helmet-mounted displays, and with the F-35, the distributed aperture system that gives the pilot the ability to, like X-ray vision, look right through his aircraft. And having every platform that's friendly to you providing data, everything's data linked. So you have this incredibly sophisticated view of the battle space, and situational awareness is huge. And in spite of the F-35 being perhaps the most complicated and complex aircraft ever made, it's actually easier to learn to fly. It's easier to fly and operate because they've got systems that take care of the fiddly stuff of managing various systems and lets the pilot concentrate on the mission. And that works really well for us as a game so that we can make our game accessible. It's like, yes, you're the pilot of a super sophisticated spacecraft, but you have super sophisticated systems to help make your job easier. And think of not R2-D2, Jarvis in Iron Man. So that'll be a feature of the game. You'll have the decision support system, and that also allows us to give you audio feedback, audio cues. There's no sound in space. No, we know that. But you have a terrestrially evolved monkey brain, and it's better for you if you have 3D positional audio. So you know where your wingman is, and you know that something just blew up over there. And of course, the augmented reality inside a virtual reality game where you look around and things are tagged with AR tags to let you know what's friendly, what's enemy, what's your objective, what's the status of various things. Actually, that first bullet point is no longer true. We get caught up sometimes in the details, and we have a third-person camera view. Every game has that, right? Well, how do you explain that in our simulation that's so scientifically accurate? Oh, well, I guess you could have a drone follow you around. It's like, and I'm like, no, but they're off to the races with that one. Yeah, we'll put a drone on. It's like, but no, the drone would have to be almost as big as your ship to keep up with you. That makes no sense. Okay, well, can we have a small drone on a tether? It's like, do you really want to put that? It's like, and then I finally convinced them, well, look, you have this distributed aperture system with a very powerful computer. You have allies in the battle space feeding you information. Your system can simulate any perspective you want, unless it's being jammed, unless it's been degraded by EMPs. So along with all those sophisticated systems is the possibility that they will go away, and then you'll be reduced to Mark I eyeball, silence, and soon death. Yeah, more concept art with criticisms, and time to wrap it up, which is great because I'm running out of stuff to talk about in slides. Real quick, early wireframe of what the cockpit would look like, and then my markups, and then it's starting to shape up in the game, and another pass on that. It's getting pretty cool, And ultimately, we'll have to dial things back. One of the principles of pilot vehicle interfaces, if that pixel doesn't provide me with information that I actually need, then don't put it in there. And that's hard for people influenced by Hollywood, right? It's like, make it cool, make things spin and rotate and flash. It's like, no, no, don't do that unless you have to. The two flyable craft that we have, there's three. Two of them are legacy. They look kind of like fighters. They have traditional cockpits. But the third, the Pegasus, has this kind of a cockpit. It's deep inside the ship. There's no direct canopy glass look out the ship, mostly for pilot protection, but also because that whole sphere, the inside of that entire sphere, is a display. So it's that helmet-mounted display taken out to make it a room. That's the ship I'm talking about, the Pegasus. It has these big cascade vane thrusters on the side, which give it incredible maneuverability, and you can't see them in the back. It's really huge main thrusters. You know what? I'm going to call it quits here and just go to QA. How about that? We have time for one question. Really? I've stunned you into science.
You will hate this question, but the timeline. When can we play?
Oh, right now. You can go outside this room and we're demoing it. It's our promised ship date from the Kickstarter is April of next year. And that was just our core feature set, which we were super conservative so that we could over-deliver. And so I'm hoping that we deliver early and much more than people were anticipating. And I think we're on track to do that. Yeah, and if you want to follow us, please do check out the game. There's a sign up for our newsletter. We haven't yet launched it. We're doing a massive revision of our website, but we'll have a storefront so that you can pre-order the game and just throw in as much support as you feel like doing. But yeah, please join us. Come along for the ride. It's because it's multiplayer and it's going to depend on player interaction. One of the cool things I didn't mention, the narrative. Very unusual for this type of game. There's going to be meaningful narrative, and it's going to be based on a reasonable, plausible picture of what the future solar system looks like. When humanity settles and industrializes the solar system, why would that asteroid mine be at Saturn? There's no asteroids in Saturn's orbit, no. But the outer system corporations are sick and tired of the inner system corporations exploiting the fact that you don't have any heavy metals out there. Yeah, the prices are going up for you. So they towed an asteroid out to Saturn so that they could have a local source of metals. A big driver of the overall conflict is, again, the outer system is shifting to fusion power. The inner system, it's like the petro companies today, don't want that. They're invested in fission systems, so there's drivers there for conflict. And it's not like a big all-out World War III kind of thing. It's more covert sneakiness, plausible deniability. I'm going to hire some mercenaries to go fuck up your shit and drive your stocks down. I think that, to me, that's got a lot of appeal. I've done the big battles and the huge fleet engagements, and I think we'll build up to that over time. I don't want to reveal too much, but I want to start small and make it more interesting and more nuanced. And we have what we're calling Nexus events. There'll be specific combat scenarios about, sort of a culmination of a plot line of various little operations that come to a point where this battle is critical. And so that mission will be live for some number of weeks, and we'll just tally up the scores. And say, okay, 57% of the time, North Star won. So then that becomes canon. So the future story unfolds based on that. That mission remains available forever. It's historical simulator mode, though. It no longer affects the storyline. But we really wanted to give players a sense that they had a direct influence on the unfolding story. And I don't know of any other game that's not a combat sim game that's done that. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.